How did the Greek War of Independence mobilize national feeling among the educated elite across Europe? Greek War of Independence mobilized the nationalist feeling in Europe through the following way. Greek was viewed as a part of Europe that had been annexed by Ottoman and now needed to be liberated. Greek perceived the foundation and the cradle of civilization in Europe by poets and mm, artists, and this led to nationalist inconscience. Greek nationalists received support from other Greeks living in exile. What is it? Why it is said that the 1830s were the year of great hardship in Europe? The decade of 1830 has brought great economic hardship or crisis in Europe due to the following reason. The first half of 19th century saw an enormous increase in population all over Europe. Second, job seekers were more and employment opportunities were less. Job seekers were more and employment opportunities were less. People from rural area migrated to cities and made cities overcrowded slum. Small producers often faced stiff competition for importers of cheap machines-made goods. Peasants struggled under the burden of feudal due and obligation. How did nationalists how did nationalism align with imperialism to become the cause of First World War? The Balkan states had become the region of intense revolt among the Balkan states themselves for independence as well as the big power for expansion and influence in the region. Reasons for the growth of nationalist tension in Balkan region. First, Balkan region the Balkan was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising of modern-day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greek and Macedonia, Bosnia, Slovenia, Serbia and Montenegro. The inhabitants were called slaves. The spread of romantic nationalism led to its disintegration. In this integration, different Slavic nationalities suggested to define their identity. Balkan region became a region of intense conflict over expansion of territory. At the same time, the Great Europe power Russia, Germany, England, and Australia, Hungary were keen on taking the control of the Balkan region since it was important from trade point of view. Describe the significance of the Statue of Liberty in Frederick Surrey painting. In the Surrey's painting, the Statue of Liberty is personified as a woman wearing the torch of enlightenment in one hand and the Charter of the Right in the other. The statue signifies the rise of nationalists to establish nation-state based on democratic principles with inalienable human rights. First, describe the event of the French Revolution which had influenced the people belonging to other parts of Europe. Students and other members of educated middle class began to set up Jacobin clubs. Their activities and campaign paved the way for the French army which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland and large part of Italy. Due to the outbreak of various revolutionary wars, the French army began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. Thus, a sense of collective identity prevailed upon the people in other parts of Europe. The first clear expression of nationalism came out with the French Revolution in 1789. The event of French Revolution was so big a movement towards creating a nation state that it regarded as the first clear expression of nationalism in Europe, as it inspired the people in other parts of Europe as well. The event of French Revolution that influenced the people in other parts of Europe are as follows. A new French flag was adopted to replace former royal standard. The States General renamed as General Assembly became an elected body. The centralized administration and uniform civil law were made for citizens. Uniform weighting and major system was adopted. French became the nation language of French. The revolution gave people true power to shape the destiny of France. France became a nation state, and the world got clear expression of nationalism through the French Revolution. What was the status of France as a state before 1789? Before 1789, France was a full-fledged terrestrial state under an absolute monarch. The two changes are: the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from monarchy to the body of citizens that spread that message of rule by people representative. The revolution demonstrated that it was the people who brought henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny. So the French Revolutionary introduced various measures and practices that could create a sense of collectivity identity among the French. Describe steps taken by French Revolutionary to create a sense of collectivity. List any three features of Civil Code of 1804, usually known as Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code of 1804 was exported to the region under the French control with the following changes: administrative division was simplified, feudal system was abolished, the law freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues, in town guide restrictions were removed, transport and communication system improved. How did the local people in the area conquered by the Napoleon react of the French rule? The impact of Napoleonic reformer in the rest of Europe was, or the reaction of local people to the Napoleonic rule was as follows. At beginning, many people, such as Holland, Switzerland, Brazil, Mainz, Milan, and Warsaw, saw the French army were welcomed and greeted as harbian of liberty. Later on, the Napoleonic rule became unpopular because people was disillusioned and turned for when they had to face increased taxation, censorship, and forced conscription. These problematic issues seem to outweigh the advantage of administrative change. What was the Napoleonic rule over other regions unpopular with some section of Europe? The cause of unpopular Napoleonic rule over the other region was administrative reformer did not go hand in hand with political freedom in the newly conquered territory extended into the French rule. The new extended region has to bear increased taxation and censorship. The compulsory enlistment into the French army force to win other regions of Europe was not popular with the newly conquered people. Explain the change which Napoleon introduced to make the administrative system more efficient. Napoleon had destroyed democracy in France, but in administrative field he has incorporated revolutionary principles in order to make the whole system more rational and efficient. All privileges based on birth were removed. He had established equality before law. Right to property was given. Simplified administrative division were made. Feudal system were abolished and freed peasants from serfdom and manorial use. Guide restrictions were removed. Transport and communication system were improved. Who hosted Vienna Congress in 1815? Analyzed the main change brought by the Vienna Treaty. A new conservatism prevailed after defeat of 1918-15. The new conservative order was established through the Treaty of Vienna in 1915. The objective of Treaty of Vienna 1815 was to undo the victories of Napoleon and restore Europe to the revolutionary era with restoration of monarchy to establish a new conservative order. Congress of Vienna was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich in 1815. The following changes were made to redraw or change the map of Europe. The Bourbon dynasty, which has been deposited during French Revolution, was restored to power and French lost the territory it has examined. A series of states were set on the boundaries of France to prevent the France expansion in future. Why did most of the conservative regime impose censorship law to control printed material associated with French Revolution in 1815? The regime set up in 1815 were autocratic. They did not tolerate criticism and dissent. They sought to curb activities that questioned the legitimacy of the government. Censorship laws were imposed to control what was said in newspaper, book, plays, and songs and reflected the idea of liberty and freedom associated with French Revolution. The memory of French Revolution nonetheless continued to inspire liberals. Why in the year after 1848 the autocrats of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce the change that had already taken place in Western Europe before 1815. There were numerous revolutions after the Treaty of Vienna changing the conservative force and monarchies through conservative force were able to suppress liberal movement in 1848. They could not restore the old order. Monarchs were being to realize that the cycle of revolution and liberation could only be ended by granting concession to the liberal nationalist revolutionary. How was how were the idea of national unity in early 19th century? Ideology of liberalism. Liberalism is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free. Liberalism in 18th century stood for freedom for individual and equality to all before law of new middle class. Politically, it emphasizes the concept of government by concern, freedom for individual, equality of all before the law, the concept of government by concern, end of autocratic and clerical privileges, a constitution and representative government through parliament, freedom of market, removal of restriction on the movement of goods and capital. Explain the conditions that were viewed as obstacles to the economic change and growth by the new commercial class during the 19th century in Europe. The following conditions were viewed as obstacles to the economic change and growth by the new commercial class during the 19th century in Europe. The absence of freedom of market, state-imposed restriction on the movement of goods and capital, time-consuming calculation resulting from the difference in currency weight and remeasurement. How did a wave of economic nationalism strengthen the wider nationalist sentiment growth in Europe? Economic nationalism strengthened the wider nationalist sentiment. Economic liberalism stood for freedom of market, end of state-imposed restriction on the movement of goods and capital. A custom union or Zollverein was formed by Prussia in 1834, which was joined in by many German states. The union reduced the number of currency from over 30 to 2 and abolished traffic barrier. Final new subscription. A network of railway led to great mobility and gave an impulse to national unity. How had revolutionaries spread their idea in many Europe states after 1815? After 1815, many liberal nationalists went underground for the fear of repression of by autocratic monarchy. Secret societies sprang up in many European states to train revolutionaries and spread their idea. Carabonari was one such secret society which many members as revolutionaries. To be revolutionary at this time meant a commitment to oppose monarchical form that has been established after the Vienna Congress and to fight for liberty and freedom. Describe the role of Giuseppe Mazzini as an Italian revolutionary. The role of Giuseppe Mazzini as an Italian revolutionary. Giuseppe Mazzini was a famous Italian revolutionary who was born in 1807 in Genoa. He was a part of a secret society called Carbonari. In 1831, Mazzini was sent into exile for attempting a revolutionary revolution in Liguria. He founded two secret societies, Young Italy in Marseilles and Young Europe in Berne. Members of these societies were like-minded young men from Poland, France, Italy, and German states. Greek War of Independence. How did Greek War of Independence mobilize nationalist feeling among the educated elite across Europe? Greek War of Independence of 1821 was a successful war for independence for Greece, which has been a part of Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. Revolutionary nationalists inspired the struggle. West European and Greek in exile support the struggle against the huge Muslim empire. Greek poets and artists used the rich ancient heritage and culture of Greece to mobilize public opinion by calling it the cradle of European civilization. Define the term Romanticism. How did it facilitate the promotion of nationalist sentiments? Romanticism was a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment in the following way. Critical approach toward reason and science. Romantic artists criticized the glorification of reason and science and focused on emotion, institution, and mystical feeling. Emphasis on vernacular language. They gave emphasis on vernacular language to receive the national spirit and to carry the modern nationalist message to large audience who were mostly illiterate. The development of nationalism did not come about only through war and territorial expansion. Culture played an important role in creating the idea of national. Culture played an important role in creating the idea of national because of the following reason. First, Romanticism was a cultural movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalist sentiment. Romantic artists and poets generally criticized the glorification of reason and science and focus instead of emotion, institution, and mystical feeling. Art, poetry, story, and music help in sharpening nationalist feeling in Europe. Explain the role of language in developing the national sentiment in Europe. Vernacular language and local folklores played an important role in creating the idea of nation in Europe. This was especially so in the case of Poland, which had been partitioned by the great power Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Karol Kurpinczyk of Poland celebrated the national struggle through his opera music, turning folk dance like the Polonese mazurka into nationalist symbol. The decade of 1830 has brought great economic hardship in Europe. There was enormous increase in population all over Europe. In most countries, there were more scarce of jobs than employment. Population from rural area migrated to the cities to live in overcrowded slums. Small producers in town were often faced with stiff competition from importers of cheap machine-made goods from England. What was the effect of revolutionary upheaval in France in 1830? The first upheaval took place in France in July 1830. The Bourbon king, who has been restored to power during conservative reaction after 1815, were now overthrown by liberal revolutionaries. Explain the 1845 revolution of liberal. What were the political, social, and economic ideas supported by the liberal? The educated middle class led the revolution of liberal in 1848. They emphasized upon the following idea. Politically, they stressed on the establishment of government by consent, freedom of press. Socially, they asserted the abolition of all hereditary privileges. Economically, they stood for abolition of trade restriction imposed by the state. Middle-class professional businessmen and prosperous artisans came together in the city of Frankfurt to vote for a German National Assembly. What were the political, social, and economic ideas supported by the liberals? In 1848, revolution was led by the educated middle class along with the poor, unemployed, starving peasants who worked in many Europe countries for fulfilling their demand of constitutionalism with national unification. Political idea. In German region, large number of political associations whose members were mid-class professional, businessmen and prosperous artists came together in the city of Frankfurt and decided to vote for all German National Assembly. Economic idea. Liberals struggled for abolition of serfdom and bounded labor and wanted freedom of market.